This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Monday morning break. I'm Kuttig, your host. My guest today is Philip Adams, and we are reflecting on substitute teaching.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
So, hello everyone, and thank you for listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Today is Monday. It is the 24th of February if you're listening live, broadcasting from Germany. Today we are exploring substitute teaching, and my guest, Philip Adams, works as a substitute teacher in a German school. I am very excited to hear his experiences since substitute teaching is regulated differently in different countries, different schools, different parts of the world. I have Philip. I can see that Philip is here, so Philip needs to come on as a speaker. And while he is doing so, there he is. Good midday, good morning. Hello, Philip.
Hello.
Philip, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm glad you could make it. Exciting. It was an exciting couple of hours, right? We had the elections. I don't know how that will impact education. There's a lot of issues going on, but we want to talk about substitute teaching. So let's get right into this exciting conversation. Philip, I'd like to first talk to you about your professional background. I know you're actually on a teacher education program and you're working also as a substitute teacher. How did you get here? So what happened? What did you do after school?
Okay, there are quite a few things I've done after school. First of all, I knew very early in my educational setting that I wanted to be a teacher. So during school days, I've done many things to make sure that's the right job for me, like working at a primary school. And after school, I worked as a trainer in sales, kind of a teaching job. And after that, I started working as a substitute teacher. Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. So this is something that will be quite novel for many people, right? That you got into your substitute teaching job before actually qualifying as a teacher. So I think that's quite unusual. Very interesting to hear that you've been in this kind of instructional role for quite a long time. Starting with, like you said, you were in sales, but you were more involved in education, in training. So you have that experience of working with giving instructions, talking to people about how to do things, so that instructional setting. Okay, so you're working as a substitute teacher. First of all, what can you tell us about the demand or the need for substitute teachers in Germany?
Okay, it really depends on the situation. Yeah, mostly substitute teachers are demanded when a teacher is a long time sick.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the main reason schools are looking for substitute teachers. So it's not really plannable whether a school has a place for a substitute teacher or not,
Okay.
at least in my
So,
opinion.
So yeah, and that's an interesting concept, interesting thing that you mentioned, that they would get a substitute teacher when their current teacher, their current full-time staff member, is on long-term sick leave, right? Is
Yeah.
this quite frequent? Are there a lot of jobs for substitute teachers around? Is there a big gap in? I mean, we know that we've got a lack of teachers in general, but are there many people who are, on early retirement, long-term sick leave? What has your experience been?
So the fact that I worked for 4 years at the same school shows that there is demand,
Mm-hmm.
clearly, because you you tend to get more likely a half-year contract or a year contract. It depends on the time that the teacher is called sick. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. So you've been at the same school for 4 years now, but you've not been substituting for that one teacher, have you? You've been from moving, say, from contract to contract, substituting for different teachers. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. Um, it's more like a formal thing. The name you it's stated in the contract which teacher you substitute, but it's more a
Ah,
formal thing. During the school year, you don't do their lessons exactly. So
okay.
the head teacher looks, okay, you're studying like English or German, and the teacher
Mm-hmm.
you substitute has art and religion in my case.
Right,
So I haven't taught religion or art.
right.
So the stuff gets shifted, the schedule gets shifted.
Okay, but you are okay, I get it. So that's really interesting. That's really interesting. So the teacher who's sick, right? So the teacher who you're substituting for on paper in the contract is person XYZ, Mr. Müller,
Yeah,
for example. And Mr. Müller is hired by the school. He's a full-time member of staff who's down to teach art and religion. Correct. But
for example,
you
yes.
don't have you don't have that experience. So you're substituting for him, but you can't teach his classes. So what they've done is they have got other people to teach his classes and you then substitute for other people,
Yeah,
so to speak.
yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think um that has got to do, I think, in Germany a lot with um I know it from my own job, where you have a certain budget, and the budget is for a particular post, particular person, project, whatsoever. And in order to allocate that budget, because we're all paid by you and me, by the government, it comes out from one pot. So they've got to be able to account for where the money is going. Okay. Next question. So, in general, Philip, how do potential candidates find out about the availability of such substitute teaching positions?
So you can just simply look it up in the internet. You can, for example, you can Google substitute teacher. For example,
Oh,
I don't know, Oberhausen or Essen. Yeah.
okay. So, all right. So the German word substitute teacher, so Vertretungsstelle in Oberhausen. Is there, okay, I'm going to do that now in a second. Is there a website, like a one-stop shop where people can just go and can look for such jobs?
Yes, it's each federal state has its own site for it.
Mm.
So it's in North Rhine-Westphalia. It would be um, ah,
Is
I
it
forgot the
Leo?
name. I think they've changed it. They've changed the names.
Okay, because I'm looking at one here. I actually did put in the German term for substitute teacher, and the first result that came up for me is the website Leo, Leo, which in German is Lehrereinstellung online. In English, it would be teaching positions online. And or are you thinking about Verena, the other
Yes,
site? Because
that's the site I was looking for. Yeah.
yeah, that's
I
right.
remember
Is
that.
that
Yeah.
right? So it's
I've,
exactly. So there's a particular website for anyone who's interested in short-term or fixed term contracts in schools in North Rhine-Westphalia. Okay. How did you get your job? How did you find out
so
about your job?
uh, the fact that I'm not familiar with these kinds of sites is the fact that I went to schools. I asked the head teachers, "Are you looking for a substitute teacher?" And it was very successful in my case, at least.
Okay, so you went and knocked on doors. How many did you have to go into before you got
I
the
got very
job?
lucky. I only knocked at one door and got the job. Um, but you can write emails too. You can look up the schools and look up the head teacher's email, and then you can write an email. "Hi, I'm Philip. I'm looking for a substitute teacher job, teaching job, or something like that," and hope you get an answer.
Okay, so well, okay, that sounds very, very uncomplicated. I think much less complicated than actually looking online. What formal qualifications do, in your opinion, from what and from working possibly with other substitute teachers, what formal qualifications do candidates need to have at a minimum to apply for such positions?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Most of the schools say you need at least your bachelor's degree
Mm-hmm.
um, if you want to teach actively, or if you want to get into the Ganztagsbetreuung, which many schools are looking for, you don't need any qualifications.
Okay, so just for our audience who are English speakers, the Ganztagsbetreuung that Philip mentioned, that's our after school care program. This after school care program is both in primary and in lower secondary school, right, Philip? I think
Yeah, yeah.
it doesn't go beyond year 7, I think. Okay, here's an interesting question for you. I know you can't really give a generalized answer because, it depends on so many factors. But if you compare the pay of a fully qualified teacher with what entry level substitute teachers get, yeah, how fair do you think are the salaries, or do you think it can be better because we're all paid according to unionized contracts, so the schools can't say, hey, we'll just pay you XYZ, right? It's based on unionized contracts. So in comparison, how fair do you think the salary is?
In my opinion, so to speak, you make great money, in my opinion. Okay, yeah. So, speaking as a student who
Okay,
worked
okay.
like minimum wage jobs,
Mm-hmm.
but in comparison to a fully qualified teacher, it's almost half of it. You make half of it what a teacher is making monthly. So, for example, if you are fully qualified and you have done your ref and all of that, your entry wage is like 4,500 euros.
After
And
tax.
before tax, I don't know what's after tax
Before
because that's
tax.
individual. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
individual.
okay.
And I started during my bachelor's, and I've I've earned like 4,000 before taxes,
Mm-hmm.
but I had to pay way more taxes than the actual stuff there.
Okay, okay. Oh, that's very good pay, actually.
It is. It
That
is.
that is so for those of you who are not aware, teacher salaries in Germany were on unionized pay. You come in at a particular level and you go up your pay grade, and that increases quickly at the beginning, so yearly, and then after a point it starts to increase in 2-year, 3-year, 4-year intervals. The unionized pay scale is renegotiated every 2 years. And what Philip is saying, so teachers do earn well in Germany. When you think about, how many hours they spend at school and things like that, it is one of the, I think teacher pay in Germany is one of the best in the European Union. What Philip was saying with entry-level pay at 4,000 euros, again, this depends on the federal state that you're living in. Teacher salaries are also regulated by the state. So in North Rhine-Westphalia, where Philip and I live, he was saying that entry-level pay is 4,000 euros monthly before tax. Again, tax is individual. It depends on your personal circumstances, whether you're married, whether you have children, and which tax bracket you decide you want to go into. And Philip was just sharing that before, so not even having completed his first degree, he was already on a salary of 4,000 euros before tax for his substitute teaching job. Interesting question, Philip. What is the maximum workload? What's the maximum hours for school teachers on teachers on a full-time contract?
I've worked 25 hours, which is full time for grammar school teachers.
Yeah.
And secondary school teachers, they have to work for a full time job, 27 hours.
Okay, but those hours, 25 and 27 hours, that would be just purely hours in school, isn't it?
Yes, it
Hours in
is.
school and what you do, because I mean, for people who are listening in, they might think, wow, a full-time job at only 25 hours, 27 hours, that's nothing, like. But what we have to remember is that in Germany, these hours, they're actually literally just your school hours, the hours that you are at school, the hours that you are in the classroom, or if you're not in the classroom teaching, whatever the other responsibilities you have, I think. So whatever extra work that you do at home, that's not, counted. Okay, that's really interesting. Contracts, you say that you've been at that school now for 4 years, but surely it's not just a 4-year contract straight out, right? How long are contracts? I mean, I know you say that it depends on who you're substituting for and how long they're off sick for, but in general, are there any restrictions in terms of maximum length?
Oh, yes, there are. That's the situation I'm in right now because I had to take a break from teaching. It's due to German work laws and work regulations.
Uh-huh.
So you can only make a new contract 3 times in a row. So in total for 4 years. Otherwise, the state has to employ you without any limitations or restrictions.
Okay. That's interesting. That's similar to what we have at university as well. You can only have 3 extensions. Exactly. Your contract can only be extended 3 times. Yours is interesting because yours is over a shorter period. Yours is over 4 years. So it could be one contract for half a year, another contract for 2 years, and then your third contract for a year. That gets you to kind of 3.5 years. Whereas at university, it's again 3 contracts, and in total, you're not to have worked more than 6 years. So the maximum term for us at university is 6 years. So you have to go on a break. See, that's interesting, because in Nordrhein, in higher education, where we are, I don't know if this is for all of Germany, but in higher education, in our federal state, Philip, it's 6 years, and if you hit the 6 years, you cannot be hired in North Rhine-Westphalia anymore. So that's that's our restriction. So how long? So you said you have to take a break, otherwise, the employer will have to take you on permanently. Is there a stipulation of how long this break should be?
Yes, it's a year. You have to take 1 year break.
Okay, so you take a 1-year break and then you start from the beginning. 4 years, 3 contracts.
Yeah.
And then another break. Okay. It's similar. I mean, we don't have to take a break. We can take a break and then, we can do at university, we can do 3 years and then take a break and come back. But we cannot exceed 6 years. And same reasoning that you've given us, that, anything more than 6 years, it means the employer has to give you a permanent position, which I think that's really, really interesting. That's something I think that's kind of unique to our part of the world.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Okay, so we are on the Monday morning break. We are talking about substitute teaching here in Germany that has just gone to the polls yesterday. For those of you who are interested in the results, you can read the results in all good press, whether online or on paper. I'm just speaking with Philip Adams, who has been telling us about the demand for substitute teachers in Germany, the reason for the demand, where one could find such substitute teaching positions. We had just talked about pays and contracts, and now actually we're going to be talking about the teaching itself. Philip, tell me, what is so you were just saying you've got a contract for 25 hours. Is that 25? Are those 25 hours your entire teaching load? That means, do you literally teach 24 hours in school?
Yeah. The 25 hours are my teaching hours. Yeah.
So you are, if I just divide it really, really at a very basic level, it would equate to almost 5 hours a day. For example, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, roughly. Okay. Isn't that hard going? I mean, you're not in school today. So this is Monday. You're not in school. That means you don't teach 5 days. You teach less than 5 days.
Right now, I'm taking a break, as I said. But if I would work at school, then you were right. The hours can shift. Sometimes you have to work 8 hours a day if you are in the Nachmittagbetreuung, after lesson care, after school care. Yeah. Some days you work 3 hours. So it really depends on how your schedule was made by the head teacher.
Okay. In your case, do you, rewind. What subjects and levels do you teach first? Just that first. What subjects do you teach and what level? Obviously not art and religion. You've said that. So English and German?
Yes, English, German, and biology.
And what levels?
From grade
Like,
5 to 10.
wow, that's a lot. So, whoa, so if you were in school at an average of 5 teaching hours a day, 5 days a week, that is a very, very heavy workload. Um, you were saying that a lot of, in terms of your timetabling, a lot of it depends on what the head teacher who does the scheduling, depends on what they've decided and what they've planned for you. um to what degree is your schedule fixed? Is it quite fixed, or is it very fluid that it would change from week to week depending on where they need you?
No, no. Once your schedule is fixed, you get every half year a new schedule.
Oh, okay, every half a year. Oh, that's fine then. That's fine. Okay, so you've got a job. So you went knock on doors, which is what people can do. As Philip was saying, you can, cold call at schools. You can pop in emails. There's websites that you can look at for these jobs, and then you interview. You've got the basic qualifications and everything. You've got a schedule, and then my question is, what kind of induction do you get? Did you get? Is there any induction, or do you just come in first day of school and go, "Hi, I'm Mr. Adams, and I have to go to this classroom"?
That's a funny question, yeah. Because I haven't got any induction at all. I got the keys, I got my schedule, I got my timetable, and you can do it. Go.
All right.
Just through in cold water.
Oh gosh. So nothing. So you don't know. So nobody's spoken to you about where the copier is, or where you could get yourself a cup of coffee if you want it. It's just, here are the keys, off you go. Good luck.
Yeah, kind of like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little. It reminds me. That's what's so shocking, because it reminds me of the project that I do with my own students. We go to a secondary school for one of my classes, and we go once a month. And I remember the first time we did it, I went to the school as well. The teacher who was in charge said to me, "Okay, I'll meet you 10 minutes before we start, and I'll show you where everything is." And we did that. I went to the school, shook hands, hello, welcome. She showed me all the classrooms where my students would be working, and she said, "I'll come back later and lock up." And I'm like, "What? Are you not?" I mean, is there was not a lot of information about, things that I actually discovered after being there for a while. Like, we used the classrooms, and after that, because it was English club project after school, so we used, the chairs, the furniture in the classroom, obviously. And I learned by through experience that, when we're done, we have to put the chairs on the table, or things like using the projector and the Wi-Fi. It's like nobody tells you anything, and you have to learn it for yourself. Okay, so you were thrown into the cold water. Tell me, what were your initial challenges? I mean, you've got the keys, Philip. That's the best thing in the world, though. I tell you, if I tell my kids that I know somebody who's got the keys to the school, they'll be like, "Whoa, that's the best thing ever. All you need in life is the keys to the school." But what were your initial challenges?
So first of all, getting into teaching itself, okay? So it was first time standing in front of a class of students. I thought about every action, everything I said repeatedly, and reflected on myself, on my own teaching. And obviously, it was really exhausting at the first time. I worked for like 5 hours, which doesn't seem so long, but I got home and was like, okay, I just need to take a break. I need to lay down on my couch and think about the day. It was really mentally exhausting, but after let's say 1 or 2 months where you get kind of like in the rhythm, into the mood, and into the mindset of teaching, and you get to know the setting, the students, it becomes more easy.
When you say that, I hope now you understand how I feel after 3 classes at university. Think about that. Yes, it is just cognitively, I think, so challenging because you can't switch off, can you? I mean, at university, sometimes in my own setting, I can switch off. But I think as a teacher in schools, in those teen years or even primary school years, you can't switch off from your class. You can't just take 3 minutes and look out the window, because they constantly need your attention, or there's constantly a little fire that you need to put out. um so so the exhaustion, where do you think that comes from? That you know in the beginning, is it the lack, well, part of it is the lack of experience, but what could be other reasons that this was so cognitively challenging for you?
Let me think about that. So, in my opinion, the work of teacher is very important, and a teacher has to have high standards on himself or herself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so to speak. That was the part that was really exhausting, in my opinion, because you have to think about your interactions. Okay, was it okay? What can I do better next time? Or about your lesson. And during the lessons itself, you have to be focused on your students, on your own lesson, and you have to be everywhere, kind of. You have to help students who couldn't understand your topic you're talking about currently, and you have to make sure that everyone is listening to you, and it's you need to be everywhere. Do you know what I mean?
I know. So you've got to be there, like you've got to be there more than 100%, I suppose, right? And you've got to be. It's like being an octopus. You're there, right? And you need to have the 2 hands that you have is not enough. You need more to kind of make sure you're everywhere, and that's really different from what I do in my own setting, because I can rely, on my students working independently, and I can trust them to not get up to nonsense, so to speak. Okay, so those were the cognitive challenges, and like you say, you should be teaching is very much a very reflective job. Teaching is very reflective, and you need to always look back and think, okay, what did I do today? What can I do better? What was good? And I can take it on with me. In terms of the subject teaching, what were your challenges? What did you find challenging, doing English or German or biology? What was, for you, like, oh gosh, oh my gosh?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what school you're teaching in, or what subjects you're teaching. But I think some basic competencies that the students are missing, which are very important to take part in the lessons. For example, in biology, it would be reading comprehension. For some students, it was incredibly hard to understand basic texts from a textbook or from other sources. So, or the ability to really focus on the lesson due to whatever reasons.
Right. And I'd like to pick up on what you said about students' reading comprehension skills. Before I dive deeper into it, did you find this issue with students struggling to read and comprehend and understand the text they were reading in biology? Did you find this across the levels that you taught, or did you find that this was more problematic at certain levels of students, like year 5, year 6 struggled more with that than those in higher grades?
Not really. I think you can say that from grade 5 to 10.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Now I'm going to tell you that that is a very, very interesting observation that you've made, Philip. My daughter, a couple of years ago, when she was in a lower grade, we were still in COVID. I can't remember whether it was year 5 or year 6, and it was back when we had alternate time in school and alternate time then at home. And what happened with my daughter was that she had biology and she had to read a particular text. It was about blood flow and circulation and things like that. And she really, really struggled with that. She really, really struggled with that. She couldn't. She read the words, but she just couldn't do anything with the information. Do you know what I mean? Is that the experience that you've had
Yeah,
with your
it is.
students?
It is, yeah. I mean, biology is a subject which heavily relies on technical terms. And if you don't know them or don't learn them, you will have problems to understand the texts.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing with the technical terms is, I think it's something that you learn on the go. Yes, that undoubtedly. But um, with me coming from my English language teaching background, there are ways. I mean, as writers, we write in such a way that our audience will understand our text. You know,
Mm.
but I think what the students were just lacking was that information processing skills, because there were pictures, that there were images that would support the text that she was reading. And yet my child and her classmates, because I had then asked her, because we were in COVID, and I'd asked her to go and study with a friend, work together with somebody, and they all seem to have had that problem of processing the information. I think part of it has to do with multimodal literacy, which is understanding text and images and connecting the information together. So it's very interesting that you mentioned that from the teaching perspective, because I'd experienced it from the parent at home working with child perspective. The other thing you talked about was it their attention span?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
right? Where do you think this shift? I've had conversations with many different people, and even with my own students who've asked me, who've said that this generation of kids that they're seeing now, they've just got poor attention spans. Where do you think that comes from?
That's a very big question to ask. So, there are multiple influences, I think, that lead to the shortening of the attention span. So, if you look at your day-to-day life, most children are having smartphones or something like that, and they're watching videos on it. I think it's like TikTok or Instagram or something like that, and these videos are 30 seconds long, so you get the information fast and quick and change the subject every 30 seconds. So they don't need to focus on something for a long period of time. And in my opinion, more children, they doesn't read anymore, and they don't read any books at all. They're not interested in that. They're watching videos, and yeah, it's hard to say because it's very it depends on the school. In grammar school, it may be different at another secondary school.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it is a very difficult situation that we are in. It is extremely difficult. We have to acknowledge that times are changing. We have to acknowledge. I mean, even for me as a teacher, I for me, every day is a revelation. I have to acknowledge that my own students have bring with them different study strategies. They bring with them different skills, different interests, but different motivations compared to myself and my peers when we were students. And I think you're going to see that as well, with how your own kids, the ones that you're teaching, how they're also different from how you were as a school kid. And I think there's got to be a shift in how we work with our young people. I cannot give any advice other than we need to kind of rethink. I think there's a lot of how would you say, there's a lot of criticism about what our kids do online. Yes, it is true. Our kids spend so much time online, and my son, he would any day, he would rather watch something on his iPad than read. It's very, very difficult to find something for him to read that he actually does enjoy. And I don't know if I don't know if your own son had that in school, but when they started back in August after the summer holidays, they had this 30 minutes of reading every week in school. Did you have that in your son's primary school? Because my child had that, and when I told him about that, he was like, "What?" So this kind of forced reading, first of all, wouldn't work, right? You say to them, "Here's 30 minutes. Sit down here and find something to read." It's very, very difficult for kids. And then he had a project that he had to do based on reading, and he came back one day in tears, and he said, yeah, he shared all his woes. But then he also shared with me that a lot of his classmates were struggling as well. And then he also shared that his teacher has discovered that the project didn't go as she had wanted it to go. So I don't have any answers about how we can make things better, but I think what we do need to acknowledge is that our young people, they're learning differently than we did. We're going to listen to the news now, and then we're going to talk about you as yourself as a teacher.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
To Schools Week, Oak National Academy have announced the appointment of a new interim CEO. This comes as the online school sets a leaving date for its current boss, Matt Hood, now due to step down at the end of March. Director of Product and Engineering John Roberts is named as the temporary leader. Roberts was part of the team that launched the organisation 5 years ago. In the article, Roberts is quoted as saying, Oak has an important role to play going forward, supporting curriculum standards, tackling workload, and innovating using AI. Matt Hood had acted as interim chief executive since Oak became an arm's-length public body in 2022. The recruitment process for Hood lasted a year, and the Department for Education confirmed his appointment to a permanent position in May 2024. Oak have stressed that Hood's permanent replacement will be selected following the principles of the public appointments process. Schools Week reported in November that a judicial review of the decision to turn the Oak National Academy into a government quango had been put on hold due to concerns expressed by other groups that Oak would pose an existential risk to their sector. Oak published its last impact report in October, which said more than 1 in 3 teachers had used Oak resources between February and July last year. Almost 75% said its resources had saved them time over the same period. BBC Tees focuses on the issue of young carers being, in the words of a local head teacher, unfairly marked as late to school as a result of having to drop off siblings. 4 areas in the northeast of England, including Newcastle and Sunderland, have the highest rate of school absences in the country, according to the Northern Powerhouse Partnership. The head of a school in the region spoke to the BBC and said it was unfair to mark child carers as absent because they had responsibilities, such as helping a disabled parent to get out of bed. He went on to say that changes to attendance guidance had created an unfair system, meaning lateness after registers closed resulted in a U mark for an unauthorised absence for a morning session, even if the pupil was only half an hour late. The head teacher went on to say that the reality was that these pupils were at school most of the day. Analysis of the Department for Education figures by the Powerhouse found that the top 9 areas for unauthorised absence were in the north. Northern Powerhouse Partnership CEO said the figures were indicative of high levels of deprivation and an educational north-south divide. A spokesperson for the Department for Education said it had inherited an absence crisis, but was laser-focused on tackling the problem. The Guardian covers a story about a secondary school head teacher who has obtained a court order to be paid damages in the settlement of a legal claim against abusive parents who he alleged launched a campaign of harassment against him. The head teacher was successful in his claim against the parents of 2 former pupils who he said had been harassing him since May 2023. The parents' alleged behaviour included starting an online petition to remove the head teacher from his role and establishing Facebook groups and Instagram accounts which encouraged online abuse against him. The couple were also accused of confronting the head teacher and the school's co-chair of governors outside their homes, although the couple denied this. The legal settlement was reached in January and the couple agreed to pay £10,000 in costs and damages, and agreed to multiple restraining and non-harassment orders. Full details of the story can be found online. Finally, the BBC West Midlands News website reports on a primary school who have begun training pupils in Year 5 and Year 6 to be mental health ambassadors. The school in Wolverhampton has begun teaching a programme to help children manage emotions following investment from West Midlands Violence Reduction Partnership. 20 pupils, including those with special educational needs, are being taught how to be upstanders so they can look out for younger children. Upstanders look out for those who might be being bullied and show that bullying is not okay. The upstanders wear high visibility blue jackets on the playground during break, and younger pupils can ask them for help. The scheme has had a positive impact on the school, says the report. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
Thank you. You have been listening. You've been tuning into Teachers Talk Radio, the Monday morning break with me, Kuttig. I have been talking with Philip Adams, a substitute teacher in a secondary school in Germany, who's been sharing with us his journey and other interesting bits of information about substitute teaching in Germany. I'd like to move on to talking about what one could learn from substitute teaching. Philip, first of all, what strengths do you bring as a teacher? You're not fully qualified, but you've got experience in an instructional role. You're young, you're studying. What strengths do you bring into your classroom as a teacher?
So I think one of my biggest strengths is empathy. I think it's one of the most important skills for teachers, and I would describe myself as so. And to an extent of kind of charismatic, I think, and that's what I think is very important to help your students reach their goals, to motivate them, and to get on their level and think about how you can help them best, personally, individually.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose you're right when you say empathy and being charismatic, having that charm, because you then have you're open. Students, your pupils, your students find you approachable and not somebody to fear. So that's really, really important. You're also not the first person who says, this social emotional skills are really, really important. What have you learned through working as a substitute teacher?
What have I learned? Yeah, it's
You've learned that you don't want to do this job full time.
no, it encouraged me even more to finally finish my degree. No,
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to it. I love this job. And I really like to work with the children because it seems to be it is a very hard job, but it, how could I say, it fills me with joy to see the children grow and getting better at problem solving or being able to do some things on their own and see them growing up.
Mm. Yeah, that is nice, isn't it? I mean, that's when I go to parent evening at my son's school, they don't say that to the kids anymore when the kids are in secondary school, but in primary school, year on year, my son's teachers say, "Oh, it's so nice to see, how much the kids have developed and how," I mean, I suppose you see it more in their younger years when they come in at the age of 6. And then when you say goodbye to them at the age of 10, I mean, those are very, very formative years. So through working as a substitute teacher, it's reinforced your desire, your wish to go into teaching as a profession. What have you experienced that you could say, let me ask that question differently. You're in a teacher education program now, and at the same time, you've got that experience of teaching in a school as a substitute teacher, and you've got fixed classes and you've got fixed subjects. You've been able to work independently. How have those two things, your university studies and your work experience, how have they supplemented or complemented each other? Do you know what I mean? Like, you have bread
I
and
know what you
butter,
mean.
and then on top of that piece of bread, you put a lovely piece of ham.
I think it's quite nice to observe and try to use the didactic methods you were given at university, and you can develop your own teaching style. Because not every approach is maybe the approach you want to use. I really like scaffolding, for example, in German or English lesson, where I give my students a help structure where they
Yeah.
can work along with, and during the course of the lessons, I remove parts of the scaffolding more and more and more, so they in the end are independently able to use, for example, simple past.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you learn about scaffolding at in your teacher training, or did you discover it in teaching and then learned about it in your teacher training?
Oh no, I learned it during one of my German courses, I think.
Yeah. So
At the
that's cool.
university.
So yeah, so that's what I'm saying. That's how these things complement each other, isn't it? You learn about it, and then you have been in the fortunate position of being able to try it out, to use it with your students, whereas your peers who are, other young people who are studying to be teachers, for them that remains theoretical knowledge. It remains somewhere in the back of their head, and they've not been able to immediately or use it soon enough. Yeah, that's an interesting one, scaffolding. And my other question, how has working in teaching made you more critical of your teacher education program? So it's not all rosy, yeah? It's not all, oh, you learn something and you go to school and use it and you think, yay, that's great. There's some things I'm sure that what you learn and then you go into school and your school experiences are different. What are some things that you're critical of?
I think the teachers program should be focusing more on the practical standpoint of work itself. So, okay, you have the AOP and praxis semester and something like that. But it's not enough, not quite enough. I think, in my opinion, the best way of teaching to be a teacher, so the teacher's program would be kind of like a dual study. Do you say it in English? Dual Studium?
A dual degree,
Yeah, dual degree.
Dual program.
Or dual program, yeah, and where you you are 3 days at university and 2 days in school, and you work.
That would be really cool. Yeah, that's kind of like that is the system that they have. I don't know if they still have it, but when I was working in the UK, I knew somebody who was in a teacher education program, and that's the system that they have in the UK. So what happens in the UK is you do a degree in whatever it is you want to do a degree in. You do your bachelor's, your BA, which would be either 3 or 4 years, and then after that you go, I think, on a 1 year. It's called the Postgraduate Certificate in Education, a PGCE, and that's similar in Singapore. And during that year, I think you can. I think that's comparable to that stage in Germany after the MA, so after the MEd. So in Germany, the teacher education is you do your bachelor's degree, then you do your Master of Education, and then you're in school for, I think, 18 months or just under 2 years. In the UK, you do your bachelor's degree and then you're 1 year in school. But that's, from what I heard from a colleague, you're kind of like in school for 3 days, and you're 2 days at university, where you learn then how the theory connects to practice. And you are right. This is something that I have heard from many young people on my degree program, that they find the theory is just too far away. It's they cannot make the connection. They don't see, some. I had one student who actually said he felt like a dumping ground for all these professors. They just throw all sorts of knowledge at you, and you have, you can't decide, what's just background knowledge about my subject and what's actual teaching knowledge. So that's one feedback. My second last question is, how has working in teaching made you appreciate your teacher education program? So there's lots to criticize, and there's lots to comment on and how it could be better. But how has your teaching experience made you appreciate your studies?
I mean, without any background knowledge, it would be very hard to evaluate, for example, tests, or how to approach different situations. Okay, so it starts at the beginning of a lesson. How do I start a lesson properly? Yeah, and that are the things that are taught in the didactic courses, for example. Yeah, and without your subject itself, it would be very hard to explain or to get into the heart of a subject. So if a student asks you a question and you don't have the background knowledge, you can't answer it properly.
Yeah. So there are some courses that have been truly helpful, and I suppose the fact that you can use what you've learned quite soon after you've learned it helps you also retain what you've learned better. Because if you learn things and you don't get to use them until 6-7 years down the road, it's just pointless, really.
Yeah, it is.
My closing question, and I need you to think about an answer to that before you give me the answer. My closing question is, why would you recommend students on teacher education programs to do a period as a substitute teacher? So this is different from what you mentioned, the compulsory practicum that students have to do during their bachelor stage, and then their practical semester in their master stage. That's different because a lot of them don't get any responsibilities. You're just sitting there and looking, and you're not fully immersed in the system. So right? So my question is, why do you think they should try and do substitute teaching during their studies? And I'll come back to you for an answer shortly.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
So, to come back to the question, I actually recommend this to my students. I have many students all across in different, stages of their studies. And I always say to them, you know what, if you can get a position as a substitute teacher, whether it's for 6 months or a year, do it. Don't, if you can. I know I have a lot of students who have part-time jobs. They do waitressing or they work in supermarkets or bakeries. And I say to them, if you can, look for a position, for a substitute teaching position. I have my reasons for recommending it. From your perspective, Philip, why would you recommend this to your peers?
So first of all, most of us experience school only as a student. And maybe they think, oh, it seems to be a nice job. I can do that too. But if you go get a job as a substitute teacher, you really get behind it and you really get insights, what the responsibilities, the workload, and the problems you will face. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it and really makes you rethink if, whether it's the right job for you or whether you are the right person for it. So
Yeah, I'm going to quote you on that the next time. I'll do it anonymously, but those are famous last words. I have to say, that is exactly the reason why I recommend to my own teacher candidates that if they can, they should do this. It's for this reason also that I go with my teacher candidates to schools, to this secondary school that we have for our project. So I guess you're one of the lucky ones who's actually, really been able to do this substitute teaching and complete their degree on the side. And not only that, I think, like what you said earlier, Philip, we've got to have a certain level of reflection. We've got to be able to think critically. So, and that's what I think would make you succeed in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, dear listeners, that's all that we have time for today. Thank you so much, Philip. This has been really, really insightful for me. I have enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for your time. I am well aware that you are also on time constraints, so we'll just say bye for now. Thank you very much. And for everybody listening in, don't forget to like and subscribe. We have many more shows the rest of this week. So listen in and continue supporting Teachers Talk Radio. Thank you so much, Philip, for your time.
thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.